at 0 seconds. Would it be okay with you guys if I started up right now? I have a fairly large family, 6 kids, and I'm right in the middle. I'm the third child. So my younger brothers, they always had this game. Catch me if you can. If you can touch me in 10 seconds, I'll give you $1. So they start saying, go. They run around the house and they chase each other. So occasionally, the younger brother finally touches the older brother. He says, ha, you owe me $1. Well, I didn't say go yet, he says. He changes the conditions all the times. And eventually, this game kind of lost its power because he ended up changing his mind every single time. I don't think he maybe paid it once out of the 10 times he probably should have. But this game thankfully has stopped. It created a lot of chaos in our house. Well, one thing I noted most importantly is after a while, the younger brother, Jojo, he kind of got tired of it. He said, I'm not getting a lot out of this. He doesn't keep his word. So if you don't keep your word, people don't trust you and people just don't listen. Now, I was given the question, why is the unchanging nature of God critical to who he is? I'll be talking about this through 2 central issues. The first one is that he keeps his promises, and secondly, the promises that we have today. Our God is faithful. Our God is unchanging and eternal and omnipresent, omniscient. These are all characteristics of God, that he's infinite and he's not conditioned on the environment around him. We like people, we're all affected by what happens to us on a day-to-day basis, whether we got our coffee, whether or not we had 4 hours of sleep last night because the hotel bed was not comfortable. All things like that affect our mood and how we live, not with God. He's the creator, not the creation. He is faithful, while we are often struggle with being inconsistent. Now, Numbers 23:19 perfectly exemplifies this. It says, God is not a man that he should lie, or a son of man that he should change his mind. Has he said, and will he not do it? Or has he spoken, and will he not fulfill it? See, God promised many things in the Old Testament, for instance. The one that comes to mind, of course, is Abraham and his child, Isaac, his late-coming child. Imagine that. They were both older than octogenarians. They were both 90 years old, way past the time anybody usually has kids. What a surprise they had. God fulfilled his promises, and we have the nation of Israel come from this man, even though he suspected, and he wouldn't even believe it himself. He wasn't able to believe it, but God did fulfill his promise. Now, let's turn to even the greater picture in general. Let's come all the way back to the beginning, Genesis. Adam and Eve just took the fruit. They sinned, and they condemned mankind to this life of sin that we have today, where we're affected by different things, where all the conditions we have around us are troubled in this way. But God made a promise back in Genesis. He said, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He was talking to the serpent at this time. Now, you will bite his heel, but he will crush your head. Jesus would come several years later, several hundreds of years later, and he came and he crushed that serpent's head. See, even throughout the whole entire history of the Bible, we see that is. But what are the promises that Jesus made specifically to us? See, we aren't exactly Abraham, and we're not exactly, although we are children of Abraham in that sense, we're not exactly Israelites when God brought them to the promised land itself. But God did promise us a few key points, that he would bring us to that promised land, for instance, and also that he does keep his promises to us, that he will always work things for good, and he is always with us. Now look at how he says he will bring all things to us for our good. Now Romans 8:28 says that if you believe in God and if you trust him in his will, God says he will work all things together for his will, but for good. He will work all things together for good. Now sometimes we misinterpret that. We say, well, I know this went bad, but God said he'll make it for good, and maybe I will end up getting that job promotion. Maybe I will end up getting an A in this class after all, even if I don't do great in the rest and what's going on immediately. Now, that's not necessarily what God says by this passage. I think another closer examination of what this would be, it was in Proverbs. It says, delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. It doesn't say that God will give you everything you want with the mindset that you have now. Rather, if you have a mind that's focused on God, you can delight with what he gives you. It's that satisfaction that comes not with worldly pleasures, but the satisfaction that knows that in the end, things might not happen our way, but it happens God's way, so we can be joyful in that. Secondly, let's look at the other promise that he gives us, that he's with us always. He's with us always. 2 Timothy expounds on this. He says that God is faithful when we are faithless. Jesus also goes on to say, I am with you to the end of the age. Now, it's Through the great trials that we go through the shadows of death and everything that we face, God is with us. God is omnipresent, and God doesn't change. We all face these problems on a day-to-day basis, correct? We all face problems dealing with our family and the troubles that we go through, but God is with us always. And not only is He with us, standing next to us like a watcher, but He is with us in that we are His temple. The Holy Spirit is within us, and the Holy Spirit can live within us and can use our actions. God says, knock and He will answer. Or knock and He will answer, seek and you will find. These are the promises that we have today. God isn't like my little brother who decides suddenly that he wants to change up everything. No, God is someone we can trust. That is the reason why the unchanging nature of God is critical. Thank you.